Most people, when they think about bone, imagine something inert, something static, a kind of biological scaffolding that holds everything else in place and does very little on its own. This is one of the most persistent misunderstandings in how we think about the human body, and it quietly distorts the way we understand health, aging, movement, and even the chemistry of our own blood. Bone is not static. It is not passive. It is not a fixed structure waiting for the rest of the body to use it. Bone is a living tissue, constantly being built and broken down, constantly communicating with other organs, constantly responding to stress, gravity, hormones, and damage. It houses one of the most productive factories in the human body. It releases signals that affect the brain, the pancreas, and the muscles. And it does all of this invisibly, beneath the surface, in a process so continuous that every single bone in the adult human body is effectively replaced, piece by piece, over the course of approximately a decade. Understanding the human skeleton means understanding that what looks like structure is actually process. And that process is far more sophisticated than most people ever learn. The skeleton is often described in terms of its mechanical function, as the frame that gives the body shape, the protective casing around the brain and vital organs, the system of levers that allows muscle contraction to produce movement. These descriptions are accurate, but they are incomplete in a way that matters deeply because they strip the skeleton of its biology. The adult human skeleton contains 206 bones. At birth, an infant has closer to 270, many of which are still cartilaginous. Softer, more flexible precursors to bone that will gradually mineralize and, in many cases, fuse together as the body develops. The skull, for example, is composed of several separate plates at birth, connected by fibrous tissue called fontanelles. These gaps allow the skull to compress slightly during delivery and to expand rapidly in the first years of life as the brain grows. By early adulthood, those plates have fused into the rigid dome of the cranium. The process of this consolidation, of cartilage turning to bone and separate bones merging, is called ossification, and it continues well into the mid-20s with the last regions of skeletal maturation occurring in the clavicles and certain growth plates of the long bones. Bone itself is a composite material, and understanding what it is made of explains much of what it can do. Roughly 65% of bone by weight is mineral, primarily hydroxyapatite, a crystalline form of calcium phosphate. This mineral component gives bone its hardness, its compressive strength, its resistance to being crushed. The remaining 35% is organic matrix, of which about 90% is collagen, the same fibrous protein found in tendons, skin, and cartilage. It is the collagen that gives bone its flexibility and tensile strength, its resistance to being snapped or fractured by bending forces. The two components work together the way reinforced concrete does. The mineral resists compression, the collagen resists tension. Remove the mineral, and bone becomes rubbery and pliable. Remove the collagen, and bone becomes brittle and fragile. Together, they produce a material that is weight for weight, stronger than steel in resisting certain types of mechanical stress. That composite structure is organized at multiple scales. At the macroscopic level, most bones consist of a dense outer shell called cortical bone and a porous inner network called trabecular bone. Cortical bone forms the hard exterior walls of the long bones, the femur, the tibia, the humerus, and provides the primary structural rigidity. Trabecular bone fills the interior in a lattice of thin plates and rods, arranged in patterns that align with the principal directions of mechanical stress placed on that bone. The trabecular architecture of the femoral head, for example, traces lines that correspond almost precisely to the forces generated by walking. This is not coincidence. It is the result of continuous biological remodeling, where bone cells respond to mechanical load by adding material along stress lines and removing it where stresses are low. The skeleton is literally sculpted, over time by the forces that act upon it. The cells responsible for this remodeling are among the most important in the body, and they operate in a constant, coordinated dialogue. Osteoblasts are bone-forming cells. They synthesize and secrete the collagen matrix that will be mineralized, and they embed themselves within that matrix as they work, eventually becoming osteocytes, cells suspended in tiny cavities called lacunae, connected to one another by a network of microscopic channels. Osteocytes are now understood to be the primary mechanosensors of the skeleton. They detect physical strain, fluid flow within the bone, and micro-damage, and they relay signals to the rest of the bone tissue to coordinate where a building should occur. On the other side of this dynamic are osteoclasts, large multinucleated cells that dissolve bone matrix by secreting acids and enzymes onto the bone surface. Their work is essential for reshaping bone during growth, repairing microfractures before they can propagate into full fractures, and releasing minerals into the bloodstream when the body needs them. The balance between osteoblast and osteoclast activity, between building and breaking, is regulated by a cascade of hormonal signals. Parathyroid hormone, released by small glands in the neck, stimulates osteoclast activity when blood calcium levels drop, pulling calcium from bone into circulation to restore the balance. Calcitonin, produced by the thyroid, has the opposing effect, suppressing osteoclast activity when calcium levels rise. Vitamin D, synthesized in the skin upon exposure to ultraviolet light and then activated in the liver and kidneys, is essential for the intestinal absorption of calcium and phosphorus. Without it, the mineralization of new bone matrix is severely impaired. Estrogen and testosterone both promote bone formation and suppress resorption, which is why the dramatic decline in estrogen following menopause accelerates bone loss and leads to the increased fracture risk associated with osteoporosis. But the skeleton does not simply receive hormonal signals. Evidence gathered over the past 2 decades has revealed that bone is itself an endocrine organ, that it releases hormones into the bloodstream that influence distant tissues and organs. Osteocalcin, a protein secreted by osteoblasts, circulates in the blood and acts on the pancreas to stimulate insulin secretion, on muscle cells to enhance their uptake of glucose and fatty acids during exercise, and on the brain, where it appears to support memory, reduce anxiety, and influence aspects of the stress response. Studies in animal models indicate that osteocalcin levels decline with age, and research continues to explore whether this decline contributes to some of the metabolic and cognitive changes associated with aging. The full scope of bone's endocrine function is still being mapped, and there is still no full consensus on the precise mechanisms and magnitudes of these effects in humans. But the discovery fundamentally altered the conceptual status of the skeleton. From passive support structure to active participant in the body's metabolic and neurological life, the skeleton is also, of course, the primary reservoir of the body's calcium and phosphorus. 99% of the body's calcium is stored in bone. This calcium serves not only as a structural mineral, but as a reserve that the body draws on continuously to maintain blood calcium within a very narrow range. Calcium is essential for muscle contraction, including the contraction of the heart. It is required for nerve signal transmission, for blood clotting, and for the function of countless enzymes and cellular processes. The maintenance of blood calcium is therefore a priority of such physiological importance that if dietary calcium is insufficient, the body will sacrifice the structural integrity of the skeleton to preserve it. This is why chronic calcium deficiency, over years and decades, quietly hollows bone from the inside, not all at once, but through the relentless incremental work of osteoclasts responding to hormonal signals that the blood needs to be replenished. The architecture of the skeleton also reflects the remarkable diversity of function that bone must serve across the body. The femur, the thigh bone and the longest bone in the human body, typically around 18 to 20 inches in the average adult. is engineered for the compressive loads of standing and walking and the bending forces of running and impact. Its shaft is a hollow tube, a configuration that provides exceptional resistance to bending relative to its weight, much like the hollow cross-section of an industrial I-beam. The bones of the inner ear, the malleus, incus, and stape, are the three smallest bones in the body, tiny enough to sit on a fingernail, yet precisely shaped to transmit and amplify vibrations from the eardrum to the fluid-filled cochlea. The vertebrae of the spine are stacked discs of bone separated by cartilaginous intervertebral discs, designed to transmit the compressive weight of the upper body downward, while allowing the rotational, lateral, and forward-backward motions of everyday movement. The flat bones of the skull protect the brain. The curved ribs form a cage that is rigid enough to protect the heart and lungs, but flexible enough to expand and contract with each breath, roughly 15,000 to 20,000 times a day. This functional specificity extends to the microscopic level. The cortical bone in the shaft of a long bone is organized into concentric cylindrical units called osteons, or Haversian systems, each centered on a canal carrying blood vessels and nerves. These canals are interconnected by smaller channels, and the entire system ensures that no osteocyte is more than a few hundredths of an inch from a blood supply. This vascular network is what makes bone able to heal after fracture. The blood supply delivers the progenitor cells, the growth factors, and the nutrients that allow new bone matrix to be laid down across a break. Fracture healing proceeds through a series of stages. First, a blood clot forms at the break site. Then fibrocartilage gradually replaces the clot. Then primary bone, called woven bone, is deposited across the repair zone. And finally, over months and sometimes years, that woven bone is remodeled into the organized lamellar structure of normal cortical bone. In children, this process is faster and often more complete than in adults, and some pediatric fractures heal with so little residual deformity that they become nearly invisible on imaging. Bone marrow occupies the interior cavities of many bones, and it is not simply filler. Red bone marrow is one of the most metabolically active tissues in the body. It is the site of hematopoiesis, the continuous production of blood cells. Every day, the red marrow of the adult skeleton produces approximately 2 billion red blood cells, 1 billion white blood cells, and vast numbers of platelets. This production occurs within a complex microenvironment of stromal cells, fat cells, blood vessels, and signaling molecules that together constitute what is called the hematopoietic niche. Signals from throughout the body, from oxygen sensors in the kidney, from immune signals during infection, from clotting factors during injury, reach the marrow and modulate the rate and composition of blood cell production. In infants and young children, nearly all bone marrow is red and actively hematopoietic. With age, much of it is replaced by yellow marrow, which is primarily adipose tissue, though red marrow persists in the vertebrae, pelvis, ribs, sternum, and the ends of long bones into adulthood. The skeleton undergoes profound changes over a human lifespan. Bone mass increases rapidly through childhood and adolescence, peaks in the late 20s to early 30s, then begins a slow, lifelong decline. The rate of that decline is influenced by genetics, nutrition, physical activity, hormonal status, and a range of diseases and medications. Physical activity, particularly weight-bearing exercise and resistance training, is among the most powerful stimuli for maintaining bone mass because mechanical loading directly stimulates osteoblast activity through the mechanosensing pathways of osteocytes. Astronauts in microgravity, deprived of gravitational loading on their skeletons, lose bone mass at a striking rate, approximately 1 to 2% per month in some skeletal regions, providing a vivid demonstration of how critically bone density depends on the constant mechanical conversation between the skeleton and gravity. The consequences of bone loss, when severe, are captured in the condition called osteoporosis, which affects an estimated 10 million people in the United States, with another 44 million having low bone density that places them at elevated risk. Osteoporosis is diagnosed through bone mineral density measurements and defined by a threshold of bone loss relative to peak bone mass. Its clinical significance lies not in the bone loss itself, but in the fractures that result, particularly hip fractures, which carry a 1-year mortality rate of approximately 20% in older adults, and vertebral compression fractures, which can lead to loss of height, chronic pain, and progressive spinal deformity. The cellular and molecular mechanisms of osteoporosis involve shifts in the balance between osteoblast and osteoclast activity, and they are the target of a range of pharmacological interventions, from bisphosphonates that inhibit osteoclast function to anabolic agents that stimulate new bone formation. The skeleton is also central to forensic and clinical medicine in ways that extend beyond fractures and disease. The bones preserve a record of an individual's life, their age, sex, ancestry, diet, occupation, injuries, and illnesses. Bone density and the closure of growth plates allow forensic anthropologists to estimate age at death. Specific patterns of wear, enthesopathy, and healed fractures can indicate habitual activities or past trauma. Isotope ratios in bone mineral record dietary patterns and geographic origins. The bones of individuals exhumed from historical and archaeological sites have contributed to understanding of ancient disease, diet, population movement, and living conditions across centuries of human history. And yet, for all that science has revealed about the skeleton, research continues to expand and sometimes overturn earlier assumptions. The role of osteocalcin in metabolism and brain function remains an active area of investigation. The precise signaling networks that govern osteocyte mechanosensing are still being characterized. The relationship between the bone marrow microenvironment and systemic diseases, including cancer, autoimmune conditions, and metabolic disorders, is an area of intense current study. Scientists are still investigating how the skeleton and the gut microbiome interact, and whether bacterial signals from the gut influence bone resorption through immune pathways. What becomes clear, looking at the full picture of skeletal biology, is that the 206 bones of the human body do not simply hold us upright. They house and sustain our blood. They manage our minerals. They send molecular messages to organs they have never physically touched. They rebuild themselves in the night, quietly and precisely, responding to every load we place on them, every deficiency in our diet, every shift in our hormonal landscape. They carry the entire archive of our physical lives within their mineral matrix. The skeleton is often the last thing left after everything else is gone. But during life, it is never still, never silent, and never merely structural. It is an organ in the fullest sense, responsive, communicative, and deeply woven into the hidden machinery that keeps a human body alive. And when you step back and see the full picture, it becomes impossible to think of the skeleton as just a structure that holds you up. Inside your bones, right now, there are cells building, breaking, communicating, adapting, keeping you alive in ways you never notice. It is not a passive frame. It is an active, intelligent system working silently every second of your life. If this video changed the way you see your own body, subscribe and join us in the next episode, where we'll continue exploring the hidden systems that truly keep everything running.